The Neighborhoods Committee welcomes you tonight to this program. This has been a program long in the planning. We started last September, and because of course, COVID, Anderson Hall being closed, then we had planned it for the Fireside Lounge, and then COVID hit again. And I guess you hear this every time we present a program, but it just is so wonderful that Marcia, Almquist, who's organized this, and Estela Ortega have been so flexible, and it's actually going to happen tonight. So exciting. At dinner, some of us were having dinner tonight together, and we were talking about what we remember about El Centro, and many of us are of an age that we remember when the building, the Seattle School building, was taken over and organized, but not all of us know all of the things that have happened in that building, all the wonderful ways the community has been served since that event happened. Some of us did take a field trip there for El Dia de los Muertos, Los Dios, we got to see things there, and we wondered, well, should we take people from Horizon House down there? But we opted to do a program like this because we wanted more people here to be familiar with their work. I asked Estela for permission to read from the mission statement so you get a sense of the program. As an organization grounded in the Latino community of Washington State, it is the mission of El Centro de la Raza, the Center for People of All Races, to build the beloved community through unifying all racial and economic sectors, to organize, empower, and defend the basic human rights of all our most vulnerable and marginalized populations, and to bring critical consciousness, justice, dignity, and equity to all the peoples of the world. Wow, what a mission. And for those, we've had speakers here from the International District who talked about how El Centro was so important to their programs. We've had people from Beacon Hill who have shared how they have been drawn to El Centro for support and resources. And I'm excited that tonight we can find out more about that. So let me introduce Marcia Almquist, who is a blessing to the Neighborhoods Committee and has done a powerful job of organizing, reorganizing, and maintaining that we have this program tonight. So, Marcia.
Well, thank you so much for coming. I'm really thrilled that we finally are together for this oft-rescheduled program. And I wanted to tell you a little bit, I think by way of introduction, a little bit of my connection to El Centro de la Raza. I first became pretty involved in it in 1975 because as a member of Plymouth Church, we had resettled some refugees that had sought political asylum from Chile. And there were a group of about 25 or 30 Chilean refugees who were here really missing home a lot. And though the church was able to do the housing and the cars and all of that kind of stuff for them, we could not provide the warmth and the ambiance of a Latino community. And there were not that many Latinos in the Seattle area at that time. There's now, you feel that there's a lot, and that's wonderful. But at the time, the Chileans felt pretty lonely, I think. And so it was wonderful for them to be able to meet and to cook together and have music together and do everything that they wanted to do that they could have done in Chile. And to have the Centro there to support them. Kind of a wonderful aside to all of this is that that family that we adopted in 1975 had a child born to them here, And that person now works at El Centro de la Raza. That was a kind of a serendipity discovery that I had last year when I started contacting them to try to get Estela to come. But 50 years have passed since that historic takeover and of that school on Beacon Hill, and much has happened. El Centro has been steadfast in the support of the marginalized people groups in Seattle and really throughout the King County. I mean, their supportive arms extend far beyond Beacon Hill. And the work of El Centro is continuing to grow and become more and more diverse, and it's exciting to see to hear the various things that they are involved in. So I'm delighted that Estela Ortega can be here. She has been at the side of Roberto Maestas, her husband, from the get-go, from the very beginning. And you might say, as a woman, I would say that she's the feet on the ground for the visionary that he was. And I'm familiar with that role, and so I really admire her a lot for what she has done, and I am very eager to have her tell her story to you. So please give her a warm welcome.
Well, good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? Very good. I see a lot of spirit, and I love that. Again, my name is Estela Ortega. I am one of the co-founders of El Centro de la Raza and have been the executive director for about 13 years. And so being with an organization for 50 years, I've done every conceivable thing within that organization to be a part of making sure that it was going to be there for 50 years and obviously another 50 years, from doing security through cleaning the toilets and writing policy, and of course, you know, a director of numerous departments. So just a little bit about that. And I also just kindly to each of you that I'm so happy that you took time out of your life to come and learn about El Centro de la Raza, the Center for People of All Races. And I have to tell you that we emphasize the Center for People of All Races because El Centro de la Raza would not be here today were it not for the unity of these four men on the screen. Bernie Whitebear, who has been deceased but a leader of United Indians of all tribes. Larry Gossett, the last living amigo who, you know, obviously worked in the African American community. He was a King County Councilman member for many years. Roberto Maestas, my former husband, an amazing personality. There really wasn't a dull moment in our life because there was so much always going on. And Bob Santos, a Filipino man who obviously did work in the community. And it's so important to us, as Marcia was referring to, that in 1972, when that building was occupied, in the region, there was only 25,000 Chicano, Mexicano, Latinos. And Marcia, I wanted to say a special thank you for finally getting me here. I was here in 2018, so it's been a while, but happy to be here with y'all. And thank you for your special effort in making sure that people know about El Centro de la Raza and the work that we're doing. We're very grateful for that. So 25,000 Latinos in the area. No political power. I mean, if you asked, you know, a person on the street of Seattle, who are Chicanos? Who are Mexicans? Well, aren't they farm workers? And, you know, rightfully, a lot of our people were farm workers. I come from a farm worker background. I was working in the fields of Texas picking cotton at 8 years old. Basically helping, you know, make ends meet with whatever little money I was making at that time. But we had no political clout. And here you have a bunch of Latinos who are occupying a building, but what gave us our power, our strength, was communities of color. The African American community, the Native American community, the Asian community, the faith community, and the anti-war movement is what gave us the strength, where the city council had to say, we were told a story that they said, what are we going to do about the Mexicans on the Hill? What are they going to do with us? Well, obviously we had a lot of clout from our allies, if you will, and they had no other choice but to turn over the building to us. And I do have to tell you that there was an effort to destroy our work. They actually organized a conservative group of Mexicans to reoccupy the building in the name of community, if you will. We were organized, and so they couldn't even make it, to the sidewalk, if you will. So here we are, almost 50 years later. So the occupation lasted about 3 months, and the city council turned it over to us. And honestly, that is when the real work started. Because again, we occupied a building, and I was telling somebody earlier that when we occupied that building, we had a passion, we had a drive that we wanted to help our community, but we didn't really know what that meant, honestly, And so we occupied the building in 1972, 1973, like 74, the Chilenos came to Seattle, that Marcia talked about a little bit earlier. And they became a part of El Centro de la Raza, 25 to 30 families. And they had run a government, they had run a major political party in Chile, so they knew what to do. And they told us, you need to write down what you believe in, you need to organize yourself. And so with that kind of help, we became stronger as an organization. And over the 50 years, we have grown into having 43 different programs in the areas of children and youth, emergency and human service programs, education and skill building programs, housing and economic development that we're going to talk about in a little bit, and obviously doing culture and advocacy work. And for those of you who were able to visit El Centro de la Raza, we sat on 3 acres of land. The historic the El Centro de la Raza building is now on the National Register for Historic Places. We would not have imagined that 50 years ago, but that means we're here for another 50, and we're going to take care of that building and continue to work at ensuring that communities have a better life and are stable. But we would have never imagined that. And so throughout the building, you see these beautiful murals that are painted in different places at El Centro de la Raza. And people take pride in that. In fact, the mural on the main hall is huge. I don't even know how many feet to tell you, like 25, 26 feet, something along those lines. And the artist who painted it was a student at the University of Washington when the occupation was happening. And so he painted that with the help of others. And his work, like 25 or 30 years later, he had work at the Smithsonian Institute. Now, if you look at the faces on the screen, before, when he was painting them, those were the eyes, faces of men. He came back 25 years later, and saw that the organization was run primarily by women. And he made those spaces into women. And of course, as women, you know, we love that. And we're about 80% women at El Centro with a staff of about 190 people, which means we've grown considerably. We've got a budget of about $20 million. We would have never imagined that. And you think about those numbers should be bigger, actually, in terms of our budget. But in the first 7, 8 years, we were penalized because who goes around occupying a building, even though they turned it over to us, So we had some work to overcome there. So part of our work also in terms of culture, we do a lot about, with culture, it was mentioned earlier, Dia de los Muertos. So you see these beautiful pictures here of Dia de los Muertos, and it's the Day of the Dead. And one of the things that we did differently, or do differently continually, is that we look for ways on how do we build multiracial unity. How do we incorporate people of all races into the work that we do? So it takes on many forms, in terms of the children who are in our Child Development Center, the seniors who come to have a hot meal and, come together like you all do here. You're such a beautiful place that you have here and you're able to do that. But one of the things, if you look at Dia de los Muertos here, it is mainly a celebration to remember loved ones in the Latino community. And probably about 25 years ago with the artist, his name is Danny Besiga, who painted that big mural, we had a conversation. Did we think that other races would be interested in Dia de los Muertos? He said, yeah, let's do it. And of course, it took off like wildfire in terms of, people from the African American community, the Native American, the Asian, obviously the Latinos. And also, we brought in social justice movements to educate people about, how do you undo the injustices? And people die from, injustices. And we have been holding these kind of events for a good 25 years. Now I have to tell you something that's important, is that El Centro de la Raza will take risk for things that we believe in. And so the mere act of making Dia de los Muertos multiracial, the Mexican consulate in our city at that time was mad at us because we did that. They said, you are changing the culture. And we were, but we were changing the culture for the good and bringing people of all races together. So, we're proud of those kind of risks and to know that the community, loved what we had done here. So I mentioned earlier, the different programs, so just a sampling, we do financial empowerment. Somebody earlier was asking me about workforce training. We have apprenticeship programs for young people that we are trying to funnel them into the trades, the maritime, into the health industry because there are shortages in those areas. And if you get trained in that area of work, you've got a good living wage there. We have adult training, computer, banking, just different types of programs along those lines. Obviously we have a senior wellness program. We still do English as a second language. So just an array, again, earlier, 43 different programs we serve that benefits about 22,000 people annually, serves anywhere in the vicinity of about 5,500 households a year. So a lot going on. Obviously we're involved in advocacy work. We fight for the rights of all people. We fight for the rights of the undocumented. We fight for the rights for refugees and just lots of different activity. Right now we're doing a lot of work around the environment. I mean, the crisis that we are facing, in this country, thank you, is just phenomenal. I mean, what are we experiencing this last little while? The smoke is coming back again. It's what was it, July 4th, I think they're saying was the hottest day in the entire world. So that means our ice caps are melting. So just a lot of work. And you know, and doing this work, I came to El Centro when I was 22 years old. And I feel privileged to have been a part of El Centro. In Houston, also I was involved in social justice work, like registering people to vote, working on political campaigns, protesting the war in Vietnam, you know, working on farm worker issues. So I came somewhat with a political consciousness, but what's El Centro de la Raza in Seattle represented to me was an organized community that was trying to do things that was going to better the lives of Latinos and other people. So I am just lucky. I feel that that was a saving of my life, if you will, in terms of being able to be a part of an organized community and grow in the way that I did and the experiences that I had, because there's nothing more valuable than helping others and what you feel from that. So I want to go on to some of the things that we're doing that manifest the growth that El Centro de la Raza has. So as I said earlier, El Centro de la Raza sits on 3 acres of land. This housing development right here, you know, where the lights are at, that is a 112 apartment unit complex. It's affordable housing. And for the time, we finished constructing it in 2016. And it was a $45 million project. And at that time, that was a lot of money, and it's still a lot of money. And I don't know how we did it, because there was a lot of work to be done, a lot of fundraising. And it was kind of like a project that put us on the map, if you will, in Seattle, because we were creating a solution for people's lives around affordable housing. And there was a crisis back then, and the crisis is even, you know, tripled in relation for the need for affordable housing. So within that housing, what is important, and you do it internally here, but it is a mixed-use development. And a mixed-use development is that there are offices, there's retail, there's early childhood development, and there was something there, and there's this beautiful plaza that you can see there where there's small businesses who sell their food, who sell wares and things like that. And so there was something there for everybody in our Beacon Hill community, where people could bring their kids there, they could come and watch a movie in the evening, because there's evening movies during the summertime, there's concerts. And so it was this great project that really nobody in the region had done something like this. So we won prize, award, prize after prize. And of course I would get embarrassed. This was like, wow, this is like, when is this gonna stop? This is like too much, you know, to be getting all these awards and recognition. But it's a beautiful project, and that there's a lot of dignity to it. You can see, I'm gonna switch over. You can see the beautiful art. There are like 46 panels of these kind built into the entire building. So there was a little bit of a crisis with our development consultant. It's like, how is this going to get funded? I don't know, you're the development consultant. You ought to be able to tell me how we're going to fund this. But we did figure out how to get it paid for by the city of Seattle. That artwork is built into the structure of the building. It's not like something that you can take off, but it's there, and that's what made it eligible for city funding, because it was part of the structure. And what's happened as a result of that is that after it was completed in 2016, it also has early childhood development. And I'll tell you a little story about early childhood development in a bit. Communities of color, churches, associations, organizations came to us and said, how did you do this? We want to do it too. And for us to be able to do this development, we had been organizing probably for a good 20 years. I would tell staff, because I saw that our demographics were growing, growing in Seattle, growing throughout the country. In Seattle, think about 25,000 people in 1972. Today, there's almost 300,000 Chicano, Mexicano, Latinos that are in King County, and that's probably an undercount, just in terms of how it's grown. So I would tell staff, we have to get ready. Our time will come. Our time will come. We need to make sure that our finances, our policies, our technology, all of that is going to be in place, because we need to be ready when our time comes. And our time was that development, because we owned an acre of land right across the street from a coming transit station. And that was that, and we were ready. We were ready, and funders and banks and foundations were ready to take a risk with us, because we had been doing good work all that time, because we got our reports in on time, we had clean audits. All of that is part of the picture to be able to build something like that. It doesn't happen just out of somebody's good heart. But they need to know too, yeah, we like El Centro, we like Estela, but do they do good work? And the answer was yes, and we knew how to keep good books also on top of it. So when I had all of these churches and small groups coming to us, I knew that they weren't going to be able to get funded, because they didn't have the infrastructure in place. So every time I had to go to city council, every time I had, individual meetings with elected officials, I would say, communities of color deserve to have something like El Centro de la Raza. Because if we don't, once again, communities of color are going to be left behind, because affordable housing is a big business in Washington State. And back then, when I was talking about it all over the place, I'd say, affordable housing is $1 billion industry, and we're not a part of that. And city council and others started listening. And so now you have many communities of color who are creating assets. They're building housing, they're building community centers, they're building libraries that focus on ethnic history as an example. And it means that there's a lot less money in the system, but it's worth it. And the thing that I tell people too is that before El Centro de la Raza did this development, I would worry every 15 days, how are we going to make payroll? How are we, do we have cash flow to make payroll? And when you do a project like Plaza Maestas, and you do a good project, people want to be a part of it. And so we had people coming from all over, like, would you like to receive this funding to do X, Y, and Z? But what it did, people think, okay, you build an apartment complex and you make your money from renting it. You don't make your money from renting it. That's to pay off debt that you have on it. Where you make your money is on the developer fee, because you make 15% on the construction cost. And El Centro I always say that we're a progressive organization, but we are very conservative when it comes to money. And so if a project doesn't have ongoing funding, we save it. We put it in the bank. We're going to need it for a rainy day. And when we built Plaza Maestas, We had $1 million in the bank. And back at that time, that was a lot of money for a small nonprofit. And that money came about because we rented that acre of land to Sound Transit as a staging area. It was a staging area. So we put all that money in the bank, and when people started looking at our books, that, you know, the investors looking at our books, they said, wow, I got $1 million in the bank. You know, that's a lot to be said, to have $1 million in the bank. So there are programs now for communities that want to develop housing. There's dollars to buy land, and land is not cheap in Seattle, as we all know. There are dollars to develop capacity within organizations. You know, how do you make sure you have all that infrastructure in place and that you're going to be around, because an investor is looking for somebody that's going to be around for at least 15 years. And that's how they make, you know, their decisions about what project. And when I say investor, it's the investors that want tax credits from you. You know, they give you an amount of money, and then when they do their income tax, they're taking all that credit to lower their taxes. So anyway, the times have changed for many community-based organizations because they are developing housing and so forth, and those communities are getting more stabilized. So you can see at Centro de la Raza here, where you see a group of, you know, the evening, the cultural events that happen there. So it's a thriving project and doing extremely well and managed extremely well too. So I want to move on and show you the next development that we're doing. So this is in Columbia City. It's going to be 87 units of housing. There's going to be early childhood development. There's an office space for a mental health organization that we bought their property, and then they moved their operations to rent it, but they want to keep a presence in Seattle in that space. And then we're helping build a church space, a space for an organization called Church of Hope. They've been in the Columbia City area for many, many years, and so we bought their land and we said, okay, we'll help you build a church. So this is a beautiful project. I want you to know that it is a $63 million. You know, 2016, inflation and the prices, you know, growing. And so a smaller project, 87 units, $63 million, 20 different funding sources. Can you imagine? Roberto Maestas, 112, 45 million, 10 funding sources. So we had to work extra hard to pull this money together, and we're still short $1 million for the childcare piece of it, but we're working on it. So it's a beautiful project, and one of the things that El Centro is known for, and a lot of other organizations are doing that also. I know you've heard of Ron Sims. You know, Ron Sims, who was our county executive for many years, went on to work at HUD. And when he came to see the development after it was built, he said, Estela, I'm so proud of you. You put that art all over the place. And he said, there's so much dignity in that, and that people feel welcome when they see themselves in that type of art. He said, because in those market rate housing places, they do that too, Estela. So this particular art, Marcia, I'm gonna go over here and point to it. This is Fulgencio Lazo's design, right? You can probably tell. So Fulgencio Lazo is a Oaxacan artist, and y'all have some of his art on what floor, Marcia?
A floor.
A floor. There's some of his art there. But we've become known for putting art on buildings, and other communities are doing that also. So we love it, and it's very cultural. And I can tell you that El Centro, 2016, on that 112 unit apartment complex, how many years is that? Like seven or so years. I don't know, I'm not adding up in my brain right now. But it has not been vandalized once, and no graffiti since 2016. And that's because people see themselves in that and respect that, and we expect the same thing in Columbia City. Now, this particular art, what we did with this particular team is that when you think about who is a Latino is a mestizo, a Latino is indigenous, Latino is Afro-Latino, a Latino can be Asian, Latino can be white. And so what we tried to do then is we brought three of the artists together, not all communities were represented, but the Afro-Latino, indigenous, and mestizo are represented here. Because we want to let people know who really Latinos are. Because when you look at, in the city of Seattle, and I don't know if you've heard of the term BIPOC. Have you all heard about the term BIPOC? So what BIPOC says is that it is Black, indigenous, and other people of color. The other people of color have lost funding because we're not Black or indigenous. And so the system, what it's doing is taking money from, what's the saying? Taking money from Paul or Peter to pay Peter or Paul. That's what the system is doing. And so we did this as a political message. This is who we are too. We are Black people, we are indigenous people, and we are mestizo. So that's our political message on that particular place. And it's gonna be beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Wait a minute, I did something wrong. Yes, this is really interesting and captivated the press here in Seattle like nobody's business. I don't know how long I've been talking, but I'm going to be wrapping it up soon. This is a skating rink in Federal Way. In 2021, December of 2021, a representative, Jamila Taylor, from the 30th District in Federal Way, called me and said, Estela, there's a skating rink for sale. I said, how many acres? I was thinking about being a developer. How many acres is there to develop, right? She said, well, there's 2.5 acres. And she said, well, you don't have to keep the skating rink as long as, I said, no, we want to keep the skating rink because it's an icon in the Federal Way community and it employs young people. And so she told me about it, and then of course, you get to work on, that's $6.5 million, 2.5 acres of land and a roller skating rink. And we're running that roller skating rink like a business. And it's operating right now, but the press had a heyday with it because how could a nonprofit be running a business? Why not? I mean, I think that was a smart thing that we did, and I think more nonprofits need to do that because that's discretionary money that, you know, will help you with your other programs and stuff. So what do we plan to do there? Obviously, we're going to keep the skating rink, like I said, and we are going to, we own a building. Why Jamila Taylor called me is that we own a building right across the street from the skating rink where we expanded our operations to Federal Way for South County. And so Pacific Highway, y'all know Pacific Highway? Pacific Highway coming and going, it is busy. The roller rink is right in the middle. That is not a place to develop housing or early childhood development. And one of the funders suggested, well, would you think about maybe building housing on where your offices are right now? Absolutely. So on the skating rink, we are going to build an education center because we've got a program that I think you'd be interested in knowing about. We are taking, a lot of our kids drop out of high school. You know, that's the reality, they drop out. Well, we have created a GED program to graduate those kids when they get their GED and then funnel them into the maritime, the trades, the health industry. And if they don't want to do that, they want to go to college, okay, we're going to work with you in getting you into a regular college. So we're going to build an education center. We're going to do a senior center. There's going to be a 6,000 square foot mercado there. And across the street will be the affordable housing and the early childhood development. Now, how did we get this funded? $6.5 million is a lot of money, right? For anybody, it's a lot of money. Our friend Jamila Taylor went to the legislature and got us $1.2 million. Not enough for 6.5. Then we just went back again this past legislative session and got 1.5 million. In between all of that, we're thinking that we're going to try to land bank this property, have somebody else buy it and save it for us, and we'll buy it back when we're ready. Well, that fell through. And I'm like having a heart attack. We have signed a purchase and sale agreement. We put money down. We're going to lose this thing. We got to do something. So we ended up going to the Washington State Housing Finance Commission. Where's somebody here earlier? They were talking about the commission. There you are. And Peter, right? Peter, yes. And the commission financed it for us with less than 1% deferred payment on the interest even, like for 2 or 3 years down the road. So we were able to buy the building. In the meantime, we were working with Adam Smith to get an allocation from the federal government. We got $4 million, but here's the kicker. We bought the building in October of 2022, and the allocation came to us almost the last day of the year, like December 27th or 28th, which made it ineligible to pay off the loan. So we're working on that right now. We've got to raise another $4 million, but this is where it's kind of nice. The $4 million that the federal government is going to give us, that's what we're going to use to build the mercado, the 6,000 square foot mercado, because you can use the money to construct something else. So I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to give you all a chance to ask some questions. These are just, again, more pictures of some of the ideas. I don't know, who plays dominoes here? Does anybody play dominoes? Come on, you gotta be some domino players in here. Mexicans and African Americans love domino playing. There's gonna be a domino park also within this development. So I guess the last thing that I want to say, we obviously have achieved a lot in 50 years. But we know we didn't do it by ourselves. Yeah, we may have been the ones that are working hard there, but we had our community supporting, we had donors, we had foundations, we had banks, we had city government, county government, state government. That's why we're here 50 years later. So we're not egotistical. We know, why we're here, and we honor that every day to the many people that have made El Centro de la Raza reality. And here's a last little thing with our little kids saying, mil gracias. I do want to tell you, see, I'm talking a lot to you all. One of the things that has really grown at El Centro de la Raza is our early childhood development programs. Every day, we have about 375 children under our care. That is like 4 different early childhood development centers. In 2 years, we're bringing on 3 more child development centers. So that seems to be our niche. Our director of our early childhood does an amazing work. And there's other housing projects that we're bidding on. More people that want us to do early childhood development with us. And we're having to analyze, okay, there's only so many resources and there's only so much time. So, but That's where we're at, and again, we couldn't do it without our beloved community. Thank you very much. And I just have to say, there's so much more that I should be telling you about.
So far away. Okay. So I think we're ready to answer questions, and then after the questions, I'm going to ask you to stay because I have a presentation for Estela, and I'd like for you all to be able to see it. So, go question away because I'm sure you have
Questions, comments? Yes, right here.
Is there a microphone?
Oh, yes. Somebody needs to pass the microphones around. Great, great, great.
Well, I can't thank you enough for making me realize, and probably many other people, how some very small things make so much better difference to people. I mean, I think it's wonderful, wonderful what you're doing, and keep it up, absolutely.
Thank you so much for your kind and generous comments. Thank you. Somebody over there. Yeah. Hello.
Working? Yeah, okay. I had a question about the Fulgencio Lazo. Is that going to be in the Columbia City program, or is it already?
No, it's going to be built at Columbia City, and it's going to be a gate that has that design on it, and
Okay.
it's just going to be, I mean, he outdid himself on being that creative to build a gate with that kind of design.
It's gorgeous, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're hoping to have an actual tour to Fulgencio Lazo's studio sometime in the near future. So
Yeah, it's not very far from here. I just noticed that he had a storefront studio.
Hi, thank you. I get the newsletters from the health department, and I know there was a lot of effort on the health department during the COVID.
Yes, absolutely.
Particularly South End and people of color and feeling not connected or just too busy to go to places. So was El Centro, any of their projects involved in
Yes,
some of that?
we were actually assigned for, a lot of, the vaccination work that needed to get done and promoting that, and had a number of clinics. I mean, I can't think of how many altogether, but I'm talking like maybe 10 or 12 clinics in the 3-year period, and really trying to, fight the myth.
Yeah, there was a lot of myths
about, the importance of vaccinations and so forth. And the reality is too that during COVID, we were inundated with money to help people. And oh my God, it was so much work, but it was needed, and we helped literally, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people with money to pay their rent, to buy gas, to help fill out papers for, just looking for work and stuff. We were just inundated with work. And, when it was just, we were hearing, okay, I remember I was at El Centro de la Raza. I had just finished coming from an event at one of the buildings there, and I heard either I read it on Facebook or something, that a woman had died on the east side. And I thought, oh my God, we have got to get ready. So the following week, we're, have stuff for sanitizing, and, people weren't wearing masks at that time. We're trying to get people to sanitize. But we started getting ready that every person had to have a laptop. Everybody had to figure out, how are you going to send your messages to your homes when they close down, when they close us down. You got to go home and work. And so we were prepared to work from our home, and we delivered every service. A lot of it was done remotely, but I have to tell you, our early childhood development center never closed. They never closed. Now, they had to close at times when there was a COVID case or something like that, but we had a lot of, there was doctors and nurses that had their children at Jose Marti, our Child Development Center, and they were so grateful that we were open. And I mean, that paid off also, and why everybody wants to do early childhood development with us now. Yes.
I see obviously that you're teaching Spanish. There you are, Dia de los Muertos, Mil Gracias, and on and on. So obviously the language is very much part. So is there any help, in spite of what the beginning was, from the Mexican government, from the Chilean government maybe, because they would be interested in promoting their culture here?
Yeah, I mean, you know, there was some small efforts to try to do some sort of literacy and cultural exchange here in the Seattle area, where people would have to like do this online, and it just didn't take off in the way that it should. I mean, and the Chilean government, I mean, they were under a fascist government for how long? 15 years or so, more? So no, there was no help there. Well, I just want you to know, maybe. Okay.
Listening to this incredible speech, the thing that's clearest to me is that there's so much creativity involved. Obviously, you have all kinds of good business methods. You understand the way government works, the way funding can be reached, what government services there are. But what seems to underlie your success so tremendously is that you're bursting with creativity, and that shows in the buildings through the art and everything you do. How do you keep that going?
Well, what is your name, first of all?
Henry Matthews.
Henry, I have to tell you, I love that you're bringing up the creativity, because when the building was occupied, you know, every year the press always was, you know, wanting to talk about it. And they asked Roberto Maestas, who we refer to as our lead organizer today, and they asked him, well, Roberto, what are you all going to do in this big building? And he said, there's going to be an explosion of creativity within this building. And that's exactly what happened. Now, how do we keep that spirit alive? There are a number of things that we do. You know, multiracial unity is so important to that, because I have people, you know, especially from emerging communities in the African community, they come to us and say, hey, we know you support all people, we need help, what advice can you give us? So I have given people our financial policies, our personnel policies, our volunteer policies. I've given them proposals. I said, this is how you write a proposal. Take it with you. And people remember that. So we do that. But we also have something every Thursday, and it started way back in 1972 with the occupation. It's been called several things over the years. It was at one time just a report back, then it was called a seminar. Now it's called charla. And charla means, you know, basically a discussion about what's going on in the community, you know. And that has been going on for 50 years. Every Thursday from 1:30 to 3, we have these charlas on every topic conceivable. Not everybody can come, you know, an organization of 190 people because they're taking care of the kids, or they've got a report that's due, because I'll tell people, please don't tell me that you didn't get that report done because you went to charla. I said, that is not an excuse. You know, you got to get your work done first. But that's part of the picture. And then I also have, and this also started with the Chilenos, where we put together a leadership team, and that is directors and managers of different departments. And we come together Wednesday from 12 to 3 o'clock to discuss the operations, policy, what are we organizing around. And so those things, as simple as they are, they work in terms of building unity, you know, amongst a team of people within an organization And then we're supportive. I mean, we show up to what's happening in the different communities to show our solidarity, and that's what it is. Thank you. Thank you for that also.
During the last administration, when Seattle was a sanctuary city, your organization played a big role in that. Can you tell us about it?
Well, you know, we played a role of being advocates. I mean, to me, who played the role of being a sanctuary were the churches. You know, they were the ones that took people in, but we were out there advocating and, you know, working along organizations like One America, Casa Latina, and other organizations in that way. So I want to be, you know, truthful to history. We were more advocates, and it was the churches who were taking people in. Thank you. Okay, I think we're good.
Well, Estela, so now I have to tell you a story.
With the microphone.
Yeah, with the microphone, about another part of Estela's work. Because as part of the Centro's work, they were advocates really for the Nicaraguan regime that was overthrew the Somoza government in the early 70s. And, no, early 80s. No, early 70s. Yeah, no, early 80s. So my decades are confused. But as part of that work, they brought up artists from Nicaragua to, for a variety of reasons, I imagine, one of which was that they would tell the story of what was really going on in Nicaragua in that time. But also because they were wonderful artists and they wanted to promote that art. And it is my pleasure tonight to be able to give Estela one of the paintings that was painted way back when. I bet she hasn't seen this, but I think she knows the artist very well. And this is a long story about why it is that I have it, but it's with great pleasure that I want to give it to her.
I'm going to show it to you all first. Is it upright? Okay, I'm going to look at it now. Oh my God, this is so beautiful. You know, we called her Doña Olivia. She's an elder in, what is Solentename? Yeah, there was an island called Solentename. And one of the things that Doña Olivia taught us about our American flag. You know how, I don't know if y'all have gone through that experience, but as a young person, you reject the flag because of what it represents, you know, in terms of war and poverty and all of that. She taught us, when she would come to El Centro, she said, that is your flag. You've got to make that your flag and make it what it's supposed to be doing for American democracy. And so there was a beautiful lesson for us because, you know, as young little rebel rousers, if you will, you know, that flag belonged to us and we could not let it get taken away. So I just want to share that with you. But this is so beautiful. Thank you so much. 1994 she came to visit.
You see that Ernesto Cardenal is here?
Oh my God, that's amazing. All right, thank you. Thank you. It's so wonderful to be with you all. Thank you so much.